Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a really incredible logistical puzzle. Think about it. How do you adapt an ancient, foundational religious text so that absolutely anyone, regardless of their abilities, can engage with it? We're going to explore the fascinating intersection of ancient writings and modern technological solutions, all aimed at ensuring that literally no one gets left behind. Right out of the gate, the source document sets the stakes with this quote from Matthew 4:4. It frames this text not just as some casual weekend reading, but as vital, daily sustenance. It's treated as being just as necessary for life as actual food. And that sense of urgency is exactly why making this text universally accessible is treated with such intense importance.
Which brings us to Section 1, the Universal Mandate.
And moving right along into Section 2, the Ordinary Bible Barrier.
Okay, so if the expectation is that everyone has to read this text, what happens when the physical object itself becomes a massive roadblock? The source defines the baseline here as the ordinary Bible. It's exactly what you'd picture, a standard print book, standard text, meant to be read in the usual left-to-right manner. But the stark reality is that millions of people simply cannot access this ordinary format due to various physical or cognitive limits.
The source is really explicit about who gets left behind by that standard print. We're talking about 6 distinct groups. You have individuals who are blind or have low vision, and those who are hearing impaired or deaf. But then there are the cognitive and educational barriers, right? Preschool kids who just can't read yet, people dealing with dyslexia or reading difficulties, those with intellectual or psychological impairments, and folks who are illiterate simply because they never received a basic school education. A standard one-size-fits-all book completely fails these huge segments of the population.
So let's look at how we fix that in Section 3, Adapted Formats and Technology.
So how exactly do we bypass these barriers? Well, the source maps out some genuinely ingenious solutions. The traditional pages are physically transformed to meet the reader right where they are. We see Braille for blindness, giant print for low vision, highly visual Bibles adapted for the deaf, and picture-heavy storytelling to engage preschoolers. It's a deeply practical, direct approach to accessibility.
But the solutions go way beyond just changing the paper. The source highlights a massive shift into digital and auditory tech. We're talking everything from smartphone apps and software to audio CDs and video sermons. For folks with dyslexia or intellectual disabilities, the cognitive friction of reading is removed entirely by translating the text into these immersive audio, video, and theatrical formats.
To give you a concrete idea of what this looks like in action, the document actually points to specific examples like the Audio Bible and software called the Visual Bible, which specifically animates the books of Matthew and Acts. By taking these static, complex, ancient narratives and turning them into dynamic auditory or visual performances, the barrier of that ordinary book just completely vanishes.
Which leads us to our final point, Section 4, Empowering Through Education. Because ultimately, as the document points out, true accessibility isn't just about handing someone a cool piece of tech. It advocates for direct, hands-on educational intervention. The core idea here is to send those who can still learn into relevant literacy classes so they can eventually engage with the text entirely on their own. Providing that foundational education is treated as being just as vital as providing the adapted formats themselves.
The source leaves us with this really profound sensory comparison. On one hand, you have the blind experience, hearing the spoken word and physically feeling it etched onto a page. On the other hand, the deaf experience, seeing the written and heavily illustrated word. The physical medium shifts entirely based on the need, but whether it's through touch, sight, or sound, the core message successfully makes its way to the reader's mind.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to consider this broader takeaway. If we truly believe that certain foundational texts, ideas, or educational materials are intended for absolutely everyone, how must we continue to innovate our systems and our technology to ensure that no demographic is ever left in the dark? It's a pretty powerful framework to keep in mind for how we share knowledge in the future. Thanks so much for joining me today, and keep asking those big questions.